the title Teaching Lucas, Training Transgender Singers, came about probably about 8 years ago when I first started doing some research with one of my students. So let me give you a little bit of background. My very first transgender student was about a 6 foot tall baritone who was transitioning to present in a feminine way and had already feminized the speaking voice and was beginning to present in that way. And so, being a music education student, it was important for us to feminize the singing voice so that when she was teaching, that's the voice that would be the go to voice. That student actually is how I got Lucas. So, let me read you a little bit of the introductory email I got. I will say I had already known Lucas by another name, but that's your first part of this lesson is you don't use a transgender person's previous name. They call it dead naming. So if you've been given another name to use, that's the name you use, and you do not use the name that you knew them as before. So I had taught Lucas as another person as a soprano during one summer. And so we had that much relationship, not too much beyond that. And then I got this email. Dr. Sims, it's funny. I almost told you this in the previous email I sent you about course scheduling, but I chickened out the last minute and deleted everything. Melanie, that's the student I just mentioned, however, has convinced me that you are a trustworthy, supportive faculty member to talk to about this, and that telling you would be a good idea. So here goes. I'm changing my name soon to Lucas. I'm transgender, and thanks to some incredibly supportive friends, I'm finally working up the courage to start living that way. I'm still mostly closeted, and only a handful of close friends outside of the trans community know this about me. But there you have it. I may not be able to get the name change court order for another 1 to 3 semesters, though. Depending on how my financial situation plays out, and in the meantime, some of my professors may end up needing some faculty confirmation that this is indeed who I am. Anyway, in other news, I hope you're having a good weekend. If you've made it this far down the email, thanks for hearing me out. It means a lot. So, it came from absolutely, I had no idea. I had no idea. So that was the big surprise email. And so I wrote back, thanks for sharing this personal information. I know it's not easy to come out of any closet and begin to live as the you alone can know. I'll be happy to be helpful in any way that I can. Are you planning to begin hormone therapy anytime soon? Only a voice teacher would have asked that as the next question. Um, since this will have a dramatic effect on your voice, keep me in the loop. Well, the story continues with several more emails, but eventually I got the email. I am going to start testosterone therapy, and I don't really know what's going to happen to my voice. And Lucas had a beautiful soprano voice, and the email that I got about the testosterone therapy said, "Before I let go of my voice," which almost broke my heart because I thought, "Wow, this is so important that you as a singer who loves singing are willing to let go of that and not know what's going to happen really because you can't go on living the way you've been living." So I was like, okay. So Lucas did a senior recital as a soprano in a tuxedo before the transition of testosterone. So this that recital was absolutely beautiful. And then it was like we're going into uncharted territory now. When I first started looking, there was not a lot of research on the topic. So I thought, "Eesh, I better pay attention to this. I better do my own research and write it down because there must be other teachers out there that need the same thing." So that's how we came to this topic. But before we get going, I'm going to give you a little transgender primer. How many of you are completely woke in all things transgender? Okay. So I hope you'll be more woke after this presentation. So the gender unicorn, which is interesting little phenomenon. You have the website right down there at the bottom. You can go on. You can make copies. They're happy for you to share this information. But you'll notice that it has categories. Gender identity is up near the head because how you think about your gender is in your mind. And then gender expression is how you present yourself to the world. Your sex is assigned to you at birth by a doctor. So a doctor, you're born and the doctor said, it's a girl, it's a boy, or it's intersex, we're not sure. Those are basically the three choices. When you, in your mind, disagree with what's been assigned to you at birth, you are transgender. If you agree with what the doctor says, you are cisgender. So if I say, hi, I'm Loraine Sims, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a cisgender woman. That would be the correct thing for me to say. I would not say, I'm female gendered. We don't talk like that. But you would be surprised how many people say transgendered people. That is an incorrect use. So we'll get into that a little bit later. So the first thing I want you to know is sex does not equal gender. Sex is assigned to you at birth. Gender is how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself. Your identity, your gender identity, may or may not match your presentation to the world. Right? So just because you feel like you're a man, but you choose to wear a dress, that would mean your identity may be male, but you're presenting in a feminine way. That doesn't really mean anything, except that's how you choose to present yourself. So I don't ever wear dresses, but I wouldn't say I'm actually presenting in a masculine way. But if I wore a suit and tie, I would be presenting in a masculine way. And it doesn't change that I still am in my, how I think about myself. My gender is not changed. So that's also something you should know. And neither of these is dependent on who you're sexually attracted to or emotionally attracted to. So there's a lot of gray area that gets covered, but those are the main terms that you need to know for sure. Cisgender, you agree with what you were assigned at birth. Transgender, not an agreement. Transgender is an umbrella term. So there are a lot of things that fall under that same umbrella. You might be gender queer, agender, gender fluid, gender expansive. There's a lot of different kinds of terms. They're all transgender. How you choose to call yourself, it might be your own preference. Non-binary, gender fluid, and gender queer are terms you hear more often than not. These are for individuals that do not feel that they fall into either of the binary designations of male or female. So they might feel one gender one day, another gender the next. They might feel they're neither gender or somewhere in between, or both. So most of us that live in a binary world most of our lives have a hard time with that. But this is how the individual feels, and you have to take them at their word. A transgender man would have been someone who was assigned female at birth, but then presents probably in a masculine way. They may use the pronouns he, him. They may not. Pronouns are very important, so you have to ask a person. Transgender women are assigned male at birth and transition. They may use the she, her pronouns. They may not. And non-binary people that don't identify with either gender often use a non-binary pronoun. How many of you noticed recently, was it Merriam-Webster? I can't remember who did it now. One of the big dictionary people, their word of the year was the singular pronoun they. I know you all learned in school not to use they for singular people, but this is a perfectly acceptable use of the term. And you want to, if a person says to you, I'm non-binary, my pronouns are they, them, their, that's what you need to use. And you use them the same way You okay? Okay, don't want to like watch anything dangerous happen. Um, you use they them in the same way that you learned how to use those pronouns. It's just that you're talking about one individual, not a group. It's the same way if you don't know the gender of someone, you might use that anyway. They went to the car wash. They are buying groceries. I hope I meet them. You would use that already. So you use those the same way. Pronouns are very important to most transgender people. And this is the place where they have to come out over and over and over again. If someone trusts you enough with their pronouns, please use those pronouns. And if you mess up, don't make it all about you. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. Just say, oops, sorry, and go on. Make it about them. Honor the request. If you mess up, apologize and move on. Don't make a big deal out of it. The thing you may or may not understand about trans people is that transition means something different for every individual. Not every trans person has surgery. Not every trans person takes hormones. Not every trans person presents in a way that you would think is in a specific gender category. So, opening your mind to the possibilities is part of why I do these talks. Because we have come a little bit of a long way in this country, not as far as we need to come, but I think people are a little more open. Probably in this room, everybody's open, or you wouldn't be here. But we're not finished yet, so there's a lot of work still to do. And if I can be an advocate for my trans students and my trans friends and anyone that I don't even know that's trans, I'm using my position of power to do that. And I got interested because of my students. It was that simple. So I need to do research. I'm going to do research. I'm going to write about it. If somebody had said to me, 10 years ago, you're going to be famous for something, I would have never guessed it would be this topic. Ever. But I'm thrilled that so many people have welcomed me in to talk about this. And I talked to all kinds of educators and voice teachers, and I just got back from Interlochen, Michigan, where I was talking to the entire faculty because they have students who are trans and they don't know how to even talk to the people that are there. So that's that. So my research, the plan I came up with was I'm going to record voice lessons with Lucas for a year. And then I hope to goodness I get a sabbatical and I can review all of those recordings, catalog everything, write it down, and publish something. That was my goal. So I did that very thing. I got the sabbatical. I spent that time also painting my kitchen, which is probably not part of that process. But, it is supposed to be a time when you reflect. So I could paint and reflect. So I spent that time listening to all those recordings. And it's so shocking when you go back and you listen to yourself work with someone like that. Because I didn't even realize how often I misgendered Lucas. Because we had worked together before. Lucas was a soprano. I never used the other name. I got really good at that. But you just look at a person and you automatically go to a binary thought if that's the world you live in. So I had to really police myself to just try my best to look at Lucas, think Lucas, he, him, because those were the pronouns Lucas was using at the time. So I published a big article with the Natch Journal, actually before I got this article published, because it takes 2 years to publish anything. Some of you probably know that. So they had accepted the article, but then I went to a NATS, so this is a National Association of Teachers of Singing conference, and they asked me to do a coffee talk, and they put me at 7:30 in the morning. And I thought, well, 3 of my friends will be there, likely, because it's a coffee talk about teaching transgender singers. Nobody's going to be there. Well, when over 100 people showed up for that coffee talk, they were like, she's onto something. So they asked me to write an article. So actually, the article they asked me to write appeared in a month, January February journal, and then the article that had been approved for 2 years appeared March and April. But those two articles were basically the first introduction into that organization, which is the largest singing teacher organization. It's actually international. um, and all of a sudden everybody was paying attention, and voice teachers were coming up to me and moms were coming up to me. I mean, it really sort of exploded, so that now I'm very proud that that organization is making changes based on this research, and I'm not the only one doing it. People have written books now. The speech language pathologists are all over this topic, feminizing and masculinizing speech for people who choose to do that. The main thing that you need to understand is choice is key. People don't have to change the way they sing or speak just to make you comfortable, right? If they don't if they don't have a sort of a dysphoric feeling about their voice, they might just, wear a dress and be a baritone, and they're fine with that. So, choice is very important. So, what you're going to see now are some images that I hope won't make anyone upset. These are actually images of vocal folds. Okay, how many of you knew your vocal folds, your voice box looked like this at all? It's all shiny. It has these little white bands in there. So if you think about where the point of those little white bands are, that's the Adam's apple. Some of you who have a prominent Adam's apple will know right where that is. But your vocal folds are attached there in the front of your body, and then they course backwards across the trachea and attach at the back, but they open and close. So the really cool part is they open and close 440 times a second if I'm singing the A above middle C. If I'm a high soprano and I'm singing a high A, they're opening 880 times a second. So it's impossible to catch that with video unless you use a strobe feature. So it gives it the appearance of slowing down. So what you're going to look at is this first video is going to be pre-T laryngeal images from Lucas. One second. Sorry, we had it worked. They were coming through the speaker. I swear this happens. It's like there's gremlins in PowerPoint presentation. Every time you're trying to do one, it's like, oh, now it's not going to come through the speakers. So they shoved a mic over there. But you'll notice that while you were looking at that, the reason I put the pictures on the other side of the frame, the vocal folds never completely closed while Lucas was singing. And this is actually a sort of a typical thing for sopranos, especially young sopranos. Lucas was not a child by any stretch of the imagination, early 20s, but the vocal folds always stayed a little bit open in the back, and you can see in the pictures on the bottom two, how there's that little slit that's still open. That's what gives the voice that sort of flute-like quality that you hear. And we didn't know for sure what would happen with testosterone, but the guess was, well, we know the voice is going to drop, so the vocal folds have to change in some way. How, we didn't know. Now, Lucas was post-puberty, so pretty much when you're that age, the structure that houses your vocal folds is pretty much set. I won't say they've totally ossified, but they're not as pliable as they are when you're younger. So the vocal apparatus that housed the vocal folds wouldn't grow appreciably with testosterone, but the vocal folds themselves, the muscles, bulk up and become thicker. So the next slide you're going to see is laryngeal images that happened after 1 year. If you'll notice on the, what side is that? That side. if especially the bottom one, you can see that there's a complete closure throughout those vocal folds, which looks a lot different than the previous picture. So you're going to see the video, and so the vocal pitch dropped about the total of a third, which doesn't sound like a lot, but the quality changed quite a great deal. So I'll play that video. So after a year, we had still that same sort of high production that you hear that you would often associate with a soprano. But we also had another production. So I'm going to play you something in a minute that will show that. But before we leave the videos, um, what we really didn't know was how much they were going to bulk up and what the pitch and timbre change would be. So if you have any knowledge of music, and you start with a really high soprano that can sing way up above the treble staff, Lucas was already able to sing in what we call a chest voice. So, chest voice, for those of you who are not singers, if I go, ah, I'm singing in a lower range and it has a rougher, strong quality, brassy quality. But my head voice is up like this, it has a whole different quality. So, Lucas had a really high head voice and a medium, strong chest voice. What happened is, for a while, we lost the head voice. That was the scary time. So, if any of you have any relationship with any cisgender male adolescents, and you know the voice gets really unstable when that happens, that's because their larynxes double in size in a very short amount of time, and the pitch plummets. Usually, it can be very dramatic or not very dramatic. The voice can crack a lot. Singing voice at that time can also be problematic. So, this happened with Lucas. We lost all of those beautiful high soprano sounds. We only had this strong chest voice area, and we weren't sure we'd get that falsetto production back. Luckily, because right off the bat, Lucas had said, "Do you think I could be a countertenor?" And I was like, not sure about that. So when all of the falsetto, the high notes went away, we were like, we're going for tenor. We thought we could like transition through mezzo soprano, which is like a little bit lower in that treble sound, but we just jumped straight to tenor because the voice dropped so dramatically. And the main reason that Lucas wanted to take testosterone, can you guess, was not for singing. It's because every time Lucas went through the drive-through or answered the phone, as Lucas would say, they would ma'am me. I got ma'amed again. So it's that feeling of dysphoria of not matching what you felt about yourself was enough to make Lucas want to take testosterone, even if not knowing what was going to happen to the singing voice. It was that important. So I'll take a little tangent here. The suicide rate in trans young people is ridiculously high. So that's another reason for all of us to get on board and not judge people, accept and love people for who they are all the time. No matter if you agree with it or disagree with it, you have to come to terms with at least accepting a human being with what they say. So it was important to Lucas never to get ma'amed again. And by golly, that speaking voice, when it dropped, it was believable. It was like, oh, I didn't get ma'amed today. And that was like the biggest thrill of all. Nobody misgendered me with my voice today. Unbelievable that was that important, but I'm not Lucas. It was important to Lucas. Okay, so let's jump forward. The voice took a lot of turns and changes. This example that you're going to hear is going from soprano to tenor, and it took about 18 months for me to get this recording. So what you will hear is the first part is Lucas singing a piece in the soprano range before testosterone. And then it's Lucas singing the same piece or a snippet of it, the same piece, after about 18 months with testosterone. So I think you'll hear a very big difference.
Bright is the ring of birds when the right man rings them. Fair the fall of song when the singer sings them. Still they are caroled and said, on wings they are carried.
Good. Okay, so you hear from a beautiful young soprano to a really beautiful young tenor voice. This is what happened to one individual. Not everybody transitions with testosterone, but if they do, they may not have that remarkable of a result. The dedication that Lucas brought to studying voice is the big part of that, and our just tenacity to figure it out. So, what happened to Lucas was after we had really gotten pretty good at tenor, Lucas comes to a lesson and says, I hate this tenor voice. I could have killed the child, but I didn't. Because I thought it sounded pretty darn good. And it was working well. We did a senior recital as a tenor. And then it was like, can we work as a countertenor? And I was like, okay. Because the falsetto had come back. So I was like, let's do it. Let's go for it. Because the dysphoria that happened with the singing voice was different than the dysphoria with the speaking voice. And that may be hard for some of you to understand, but it was important to Lucas not to sound like a tenor and didn't like singing like that. So we started working as a countertenor, which means singing in that treble heady sound. And countertenors are usually cisgender men. So that's what we tried. And this next recording, it's a little quiet, but this happened about 2 years after the testosterone. And this is in our countertenor voice at a competition. Sorry, that's so quiet. I recorded it in an auditorium at a competition. So you hear it's not the same as that soprano voice we heard, but it has some of the similar qualities, except a little more hauntingly hollow, like a lot of falsetto production is. Lucas won a competition as competing in Nats, the senior men's division, presenting as masculine, singing countertenor that year. So I was floored. I was like, wow, this kid is really remarkable. So transition is an ongoing process for many people. So I will just tell you the rest of the story. How many people remember Paul Harvey? Yeah, there's got to be some of you out there. Awesome, yeah. He would always tell the rest of the story. Lucas decided, I think I'm non-binary. I don't want to use he, him. Went through a short phase of she, her, they, them. Now they are 100% committed to the they, them pronouns. And we still work in the countertenor / mezzo soprano way. And I went to my Nats colleagues and I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to call my student. Because to be a countertenor, my student should present in a masculine way. But that's the voice they're using because they've had testosterone. So the proudest moment in my life this year, Nats decided to take gender completely out of our competition. It's a miracle. So now, instead of freshman women 1 to 2 semesters through age 21, it says freshman treble, any gender, 1 to 2 semesters through age 21. And the other one says freshman TTB, tenor, tenor, baritone, same designation. So now anyone of any gender can compete at their level and their age and be in the right room because of their voice sound, not what they look like. So if that can happen, yes, applause for Nats. If that can happen in that kind of really old established organization, it can happen everywhere. And we can all give up some of this, binary thinking. So the last slide just sort of basically gives you the headlines of what happened. We lost our chest voice, or we gained our chest voice, the soprano range went away. Then the soprano range, or the head voice, or falsetto, whatever you want to call it, came back. And we worked tenor for the first 2 years, and then we changed to use the treble voice. Lucas now uses another name, but is still working with me on occasion. And they use the they them pronouns and are determined to probably go to grad school and work in some kind of performance venue with their voice. So we will keep working until that time happens, until they're accepted at some grad program somewhere in this country or Canada, because that's where they're looking. Okay. So